It's Cash Color Cannabis, a high level of conversation. In this episode is sponsored by Atlantis Clothing. From our Drug Lord collection to Atlantis and Return of the Vipers, all shirts are available now. Head to atlantisclothing.com and shop today. All right, guys, so I'm back today with another super dope episode of the Cash Color Campus podcast. We're recording live at my favorite place on earth, which is LivehiphopDaily down here in downtown Atlanta. And today's episode, I get to talk about stress. Now, for those who don't know, I actually have been a tad bit stressed out. Like, my life is just extra. You know what I'm saying? If y'all can imagine it. But I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person dealing with just trying to figure out ways to properly deal with stress to where you're not screaming on people or shooting at kids with water guns like your Gucci man. And I thought the first person to help me out with this was my good friend SiHa. Most of y'all might know her from Yellow Mat Yoga. I know her just because even speaking to her makes you will lower your stress levels. So I would love to introduce you tonight. SiHa, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing good. That's a great compliment. I want people to feel more calm around me, so I gotta practice.
You do it very well, man. You do it very well. And like I mentioned, most people probably know you from Yellow Mat Yoga, but if you can, just please, for those who are not familiar, just introduce yourself and let them know what you do.
Yeah, my name is SiHa. I claim Atlanta as home, but I'm from all over. And I never had any plans to be a yoga teacher. My background is in advertising and sports management, so I had probably one of the most high-stress jobs that you could ever imagine in life.
Yeah.
But I was really good at my job, and I liked that level of like intensity. I think that's maybe like my athlete background. I'm always trying to be in competition and stuff. But it was really intense. So I did that cliche thing. I was like, for sure, if I quit my job and become a yoga teacher, life will get much easier. So I did just that. That was 5 years ago. I left corporate America, went to yoga teacher training, said, I'm gonna just keep this in the background and teach a lot of me's. And what I didn't know was, this was the thing that I was looking for, that maybe if I would have had in the time that I was, doing my job, that would have helped to moderate some of my stress. So 5 years later, my main project is Yellow Mat Wellness. I'm a full-time yoga and meditation teacher, most specifically trauma-informed yoga. So I teach other yoga teachers to go teach in jails, schools, homeless shelters, foster care centers. And there's an interesting path in there of how I got into cannabis. So I'm right at the intersection of wellness and cannabis. So I'm now the creative director of Rare Bird Botanicals, which is hella cool to even say that.
You do a lot of things, man. And I didn't know about your corporate background because, sports management, marketing. Were you an athlete prior to that? Like, what did you play?
Yeah, so I've been a competitive volleyball player my entire life. I thought I was going to be a professional volleyball player. I had a whole different trajectory of my life for coaching.
Volleyball players scare me.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. We got a lot of aggression.
Y'all are really competitive. Like, I don't know if
super competitive.
I don't know if you've ever seen Broad City, but like how Abby was, like Abby competitive, like they get Abby competitive. Like they'll push you over.
Let's not play tic-tac-toe.
Now, crazy though,
Let's not play head.
Let me tell you something. Y'all saw the video of me shooting water guns. The girl I was shooting at, my niece Kennedy, she's a future volleyball star. So you understand why I had to go so hard.
Ooh, and I'm a Scorpio.
Yeah.
Super intense.
Yeah.
But I love that level of intensity. I love like teamwork. I've always loved that. And so I think that transferred over to this really fast-paced, like new business, corporate. I was working on 40, 50, $100 million advertising accounts when I was 27 years old. So it was really rocking.
That's dope.
Well, a lot of stress.
You made a I guess a very unusual transition then from corporate America to saying I'm gonna be doing yoga now. Well, how did the Yellow Mat Yoga start, and like what was that transition like for you as far as just getting used to not being in corporate America and now it's yoga pants and yoga pants.
Totally different.
Yeah, totally different.
I had I think I try to find like where my entry point into yoga was, and I say I know that my dad had one of those like Rodney Yee yoga on the rocks sort of videos when I was a little kid that everybody remembers, but I remember that. The first formal time I remember a yoga practice was in volleyball preseason, my coach popping in a tape. That was the first time that I had a yoga practice, and I was like, oh, this is lame. Let's go sprint. Let's go hit some volleyballs. Yeah. It was just too slow.
You really were competitive. You really were competitive.
Oh, and like, don't talk to me unless we're gonna sprint or climb up something. That's how I want to work out. Throw some tires. And so when I graduated from college, I went from being I had played volleyball from 9 until 23.
Yeah.
And then overnight, I was in a corporate advertising office right in Buckhead. And my life was different. I used the term, I was like fatscular. I was like eating snacks every day and sitting, but I still was working out, and nobody taught me how to just train for living. I only had ever known how to be an athlete. So I remember going to a gym that was, right by my apartment, and like, I'm gonna take yoga. Yoga's the easy class. I got my butt kicked. I got my butt kicked. Yeah. And so it was that competitive nature right there that actually started me back to yoga. That was 15 years ago. So I've been practicing yoga for 15 years.
You know what? Leaving sports, especially if you've been competitive for a long time, is hard. I could vouch for that. Like, I played basketball competitively from 13 all the way up into my 20s. Yeah. And then, literally, I say stop that because I still played until my 20s, but I stopped abruptly sophomore year of college, and I was playing. Yeah. And I remember telling my coach, I'm done with this shit. I'm going to be a writer. And he thought I was joking. He said, bro, I'm going to keep this uniform for you, right? There's no way you're not going to keep playing. But it's a different level of stress even with that. And it took me, I think I was 19 at the time. It took a real come into Jesus moment for me to say, this is wearing me out mentally, and I'm not going to be a pro. You know what I'm saying? So I really got to figure out what else I can do. Because what I didn't want to do was be what I see a lot of brothers become, which is a 30-year-old semi-pro basketball player. And never think to yourself about how many other skills you could have used this skill set for.
Yeah. I'm too competitive, so there's probably plenty of times where I could have said, I'll take a different path, but I love volleyball. I love that competitive. I love sports. I love the competitive, the team-building nature. Yeah. But long story short, I went ahead and transferred that over to my corporate job. When you work in these big teams and on these big projects, I guess it was the closest that I could get to it. I started practicing yoga on and off, and it was that same thing. I say to people that I say my yoga's 15 years, but it's like I'd go to a gym for a couple months, you feeling stretched out, got your hamstring loose, and then work would pop up, a dude will pop up, and I'll quit yoga for a year. And then when that's over, I'd get back on a mat, be tight, tired, stiff, and I would start again. In 2015, I made it back to Atlanta for whatever reasons. I was out in LA and I came back to Atlanta like, rent's cheap, let me come back. And New Year's resolution, I found a yoga studio again, like on a Groupon. And I said, I'm gonna start going again. But the only difference is this time I didn't stop. And so when you're going to yoga once a week, you're gonna feel a little better. When you go to yoga 2 times a week, you start noticing some difference. By the time you're going to yoga 3 or 4 times a week, I always say, it's not that you notice what's happening in your body. I started noticing that when I was going to work, by the time I got into the parking lot, my shoulders were up around my ears and I was gripping the steering wheel and I was pretty much having a panic attack every day I got to work because I was so stressed out. That's what you start to notice. Wow. Why do I feel so calm when I do this thing? And then when I'm around these people or in this place or doing this thing, I don't feel any of that. That's what starts happening when you have a more consistent wellness practice. For me, it was yoga.
It was at the moment you also knew that I got to get out of this corporate situation. Like, there's no way that, like you say, you can go from one extreme to the other. I go from being really relaxed and really in a good centered place to your shoulders are up here and literally I got to deal with this for 8 hours. Like, was that moment?
Yeah, no. Isn't that the way that it was? I was like, let me work some more. Oh, I probably just need to go get a drink. I just need to go do any other thing. So I think there's a point where you might start noticing the differences, but I was looking at my 401k, what do you do?
Yeah, you got to.
What do you do when you're this stressed out? Or the messages that I've gotten from my family are, you can sleep when you're dead. Everybody's working this hard. I have that athlete mentality. So it was actually very difficult for me, even when I knew I needed to make a change. From the time that I said, okay, I think that it's time for me to leave my job, I want to say it took me 8 months.
Sheesh.
8 months. A painful 8 months. I tried to do a sabbatical. I tried to make a work from home. I tried to do a lot of things until I was like, you know what? I'm going to give y'all my 2-month notice. So I got enough time to figure out when I'm going to leave. And that was December of 2015. So January 2016, basically overnight, I went from a senior account executive, account director running a multi-million-dollar advertising account to just being an unemployed yoga teacher student. And that was we can talk about that in a different episode.
That's crazy, man. You know what, but your story is very familiar to a lot of people right now, which is why I have you on. People are going through a very hard transition, I feel. we're watching between COVID, which started off, a couple of months ago. You've had people probably who were like yourself. They were really they were so used to the stress level and used to their job, it became part of their personality. So to be a part of it was kind of weird. Forcing them to stay home. And then now you have this, what they keep calling the new normal you got to get used to, has to be blowing some people away. Yeah. So I want to talk to you about how people can deal with some of that stuff. Like, I'm pretty sure now that I do know your background even more, you should be able to speak about that. For some of the people now who are now transitioning home, they're now stuck home. This is something brand new to them. And they're probably having a hard time trying to adjust. Like, what would be some advice you would give to somebody like that who is having that hard time trying to adjust to this new normal right now?
Yeah. So my personal experience was, I think I said, I thought that the solution to my problem was the job.
Yeah.
So most certainly the schedule, Atlanta traffic in 2015, 2016, I was sitting in traffic for an hour and 15 minutes from East Atlanta to Buckhead one way, taking calls in the car,
Girl, I'm stressed listening to
working
this.
all day and turning back around. I have now a 17-year-old daughter who was going into middle school. I was on every PTA board. I coached. I was trying to go to church and make my workout. I was trying to eat right. I was trying to do all those things and stay up on Love and Hip Hop. Like, it was too much when you talk about
Did you
stress.
develop a new hour in a day or something like that?
I was
What was
trying
all
to,
this going on?
but again, it was just this, like, I think Instagram and social media culture will have you feel that everybody's accomplishing everything all the time.
Yeah.
And so I was doing the same thing of, I'm gonna hop on a jet, get back, do all this, no weekends. And so when I left my job, a very interesting thing started happening, is that almost every day at right around 9 a.m., I would start to feel that same, like, little butterfly in my stomach or like tightening of my chest, like I had someplace to be. It was like that same sort of anxiety. Or it would get to be late night and I'm still like on the computer trying to tap out my next yoga sequence or who I need to find to teach classes. Yeah. And so what's actually most horrifying for me was like, oh, it ain't got nothing to do with the job. It is literally me that is causing all of the stress, overwhelm, upset. It ain't got nothing to do that I stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning watching Netflix and instead of getting my sleep. It has nothing to do that my diet is trash and I'm considering myself to try to get better in my health. So those were the really painful sort of waking ups that, oh snap, now I'm just broke and stressed. Because now I'm trying to like go back and unlearn most of the habits that I've learned and picked up in corporate America to make me successful. Like, I was really rewarded for the way that I operated.
Yeah, listening to you, I was hella stressed like that. I used to work for apartments.com for a while. And I worked, it was one of those offices where you could literally walk in the building and stand and you could see all the cubicles and people were just in there and phones was going. And I hated it. They paid amazing, and I used to hate walking in there. Like, I would almost cry. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It would be that painful.
There's not enough money that they could give you. There's not enough switching of your time. I remember for some while, I was like, I'll get this. How many people are like, oh, I'll get this check so long as I can work from home? Yeah. And then it's the work that you're doing is still you're exchanging hours of your life for. So I started finding myself like, why am I on this 40-person status call that I put together that nobody's going to pay attention to? Why am I working on this project that's absolutely going to get put on hold again and not doing anything for myself? So those were the things that I was really having to pause and take a look at. And that was important.
So what I feel like I'm hearing you say is, basically that at some point we have to take a beat, and just pause and think to yourself, I am stressed. Now, you believe it might be the job. You may believe it might be a ton of other things. But thinking again, looking in the mirror moment, what am I doing to cause a lot of this stress? You know what I mean? Am I walking into this building already knowing I hate it? And I think that was a part of my stress. I'm waking up in the morning knowing I hate this thing. So if that's a whole another level of stress right there. Like when I come to Live Hip Hop Daily, I always call this my therapy personally. I'm an introverted just by nature. I don't like being in front of cameras, but this helps me. This is my peace spot. I've never come in here and felt stressed out. But I've realized after when I was working and coming here, that my stress level would leave the minute I walked out that job. And as I'm walking down the street, I feel myself like melting. Like it's a different level of things,
Right?
man. And yeah, it's crazy that you have to really look at it like that. You feel like life is nothing but working and trying to make this check and trying to do this.
Yeah.
But it's like how much of this is killing me where I really could just really, like you say, take a step back and really just reevaluate my life and think to myself, how is this, one, how can I sustain myself in a way that is not going to make me want to blow my brains out?
Yeah. So the pause is what you said is important. And I don't think enough people spend a time with a pause. And I mean that in the sense of we're immediately into action. So have you ever seen anybody on Friday, they were eating trash and on Monday they're going to be a vegan?
Yeah.
And it's like,
Me.
you can go on. Me too.
Me.
Sorry, I'm talking right to me.
Yeah.
And so
At me.
It's just I think, again, we have this thing that if you sign up for this course, if you get this book, if you go on this retreat,
Oh, that's the
then
other thing.
all of a sudden you're going to have this instant gratification.
Yeah.
And I had to learn a very painful way that it has been more challenging for me to figure out the things that I need to stop doing than the things that I need to start doing.
You know, you briefly touched on something I did want to kind of speak on, which is I feel like one thing that's really stressing people out that I notice, especially being quarantined, is FOMO, a fear of missing out.
Yeah.
And I thought that when I heard J. Cole's Snow on the Bluff record, I said, boy, you must really be bored. like what was the purpose of inserting yourself into this situation other than you just felt you needed to? And that, again, I could put myself in his shoes, because it's like, there's so many times I've been online and I wanted to go to a protest. I wanted to do so many things.
Yeah.
I felt that I've done the protest. I've been there since Mike Brown to Trayvon Martin's. Right now, I feel like the most thing I could do for my own peace of mind is not. You know, and I feel like, again, it goes back to taking a beat thing. We have this nonstop 24-hour news cycle that happens even through our own personal social media channels that make us feel like we are not doing enough and we're not doing something. And you almost force yourself into action, which is now forcing yourself into stress.
Yeah.
I have to check myself about that so many times, that just because you're seeing this on repeat and people are trying to guilt you into doing something doesn't mean you should do it, you know?
I think I got a little practice at quarantine in this time that, like, again, I was happy hour queen 5 days a week. I set up all the parties that you would come to overnight. I was a team and a business of one.
Yeah.
And so I just think I got a little practice in quarantine of what does it feel like when you're making intentional choices to not be always in the action. And I think it makes us, when you have to sit with yourself for a little bit,
Yeah.
when you have to sit with the people that are closest to you in your space, it really calls up some stuff that maybe you have been able to get out the house to a happy hour and drink
mask.
away, that you've been able to get away for a weekend. And really these last few months of being made to sit still, we all know how to be in action, but so many of us do not know how to sit still. And I'm saying that I have had to practice that diligently, and I'm still only a little good at it.
No, and I think it's something that you really have to practice, because we had spoke off air about you were practicing your consumption.
Yeah.
And I think that's something it goes back to taking a beat. You got to learn how to slow down your consumption. And we're talking about not cannabis consumption. We're talking about social media, TV, radio. You got to slow down how much you are consuming, because you're spending more time at this moment. There is no breaks. You're just hearing constantly over and over again, this person died, this just happened, Trump just said this. All this stuff is driving you crazy all at the same time.
How did you, I ask everybody, now that we've been a little bit like past just that initial part of quarantine, I'm like, how were your first 3 weeks? Because my first 3 weeks, I cried. I cried because my whole schedule overnight, international trips, graduation, celebration, everything canceled.
Me too.
I went to drinking shortly after that. Nothing else to do. It's 11 o'clock. Every meeting is canceled.
Me
I don't
too.
have to put on real pants if I don't want to. And then I think I had the chance to clear that out. And so I was like, now, what about all this free time? You've been just saying, if I just had one extra week to get it done. And so then that started to come up to me. All this list of projects, all these to-do lists that I've had, all these, more times that I wasn't hustling. I turned into a yoga hustler. I was teaching 18 to 20 hours of yoga a week, which is insane, in addition to my own personal practice. Yeah. And I realized that, why was I trying to fill this space? What was really meaningful when you talk about consumption? Was I just consuming because I was bored, because I needed something to do, because that's what made me feel worthwhile? Or was I consuming now that I could choose anything, any show to watch, anything to do, any activity, I was consuming a lot of sleep and a lot of edibles.
I think my first 3 weeks, I mean, because I got ripped off the same way. Like, and I'm going to give y'all a heads up. Prior to them announcing quarantine, I got sick. And I wasn't sure if it was COVID or not, but I know for 4 straight days, that was the most pain, the most sickness I've ever had experienced in my life. And then on the 4th day, and this is where Nicole, I remember Nicole messaging me and saying, you know, they just canceled South by Southwest. And then I was like, oh, so I really don't know what the hell I'm about to do for the next 3 weeks. My wife don't even come back for 2 weeks.
Is that when coronavirus was real?
It was,
for you?
yeah, it was
when
real for me.
When they canceled South by Southwest,
Yeah.
I was like,
yes,
whoa,
yes.
Oh, we're not playing.
I remember telling Nicole, she said, do you think they'll do it? Hell no. We got approved for media passes this year. They're not canceling shit. And then she hits me the very next day. I'm laying on the couch, still trying to get past whatever sickness is in my body. And she says, yeah, they canceled it. And I go online, and now here again.
I was shook.
Now here again, we're needing to slow my consumption. Because I'm just going from scroll to scroll to scroll. And every page is somebody talking about South by Southwest. Then you get the people with the deep dives, and we got the blog posts. And I'm like, Lord, I didn't know what to do. Like, at one point, I remember my mom asking me, how many times can you go to the grocery store? Like, I went to the grocery store daily, man.
The grocery store every day. Need to pick up another piece of fruit.
That's
I'm
what
gonna get out.
Yeah. Like
it
was. I was trying to find stuff to do versus thinking to myself, like you had said, I literally had a list of things that I could have coordinated that would actually help me not be so stressed out about all this stuff that apparently is being canceled and things I was already planning. I already planned out the money that I was gonna make from South by Southwest. I already planned out the money I was gonna make from South by Southwest. You know what I mean? So all that was like a whole different situation.
Wow.
You gotta see, I think, all that blew my mind. So yeah, my first 3 weeks, I spent a lot of it at Kroger, Walmart. Me and my shirt printer, we got real cool.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Just going to check out things every day. I made it
bro, I just wanted to check out some stuff.
Get to the mailbox like it was a whole, like I was trying to plan these gigantic
Girl,
things to just go and pick
I met
up
my
some
neighbors.
extra
I met
milk.
my neighbors. You know, for the first time, I'm like really outside talking to my
Walking in
neighbors.
the park for no reason by my house.
It was.
Like it's just a
I
thing
literally
to do.
didn't know what to do with myself. You're right. Like the first 3 weeks was kind of confusing. Other than watching, trying to slow my consumption down. I actually got hooked on watching First 48 on repeat, and that's something you really don't want to get hooked on watching because it's like
King. I went in on that. I was watching episodes or whatever. It was like for a while. I think there was 1 week where it totally felt like summer break. I was like, okay, I won't do any work at all this week and just veg on the couch.
Yeah.
And no, also not good for me. Overconsumption.
No.
Overconsumption.
I did that. I overdid it on Netflix. Like I did watch the Tiger King. Tiger King is the most, like Joe Exotic is the most toxic human being ever. Don't ever praise that man.
We gave too much shine.
Don't praise that man. He made his mom go bankrupt to fight a stupid battle. Like never cheer somebody on like that. But I did. I got knee deep in all that stuff, man. It was bizarro world for me for a little while because it took another couple of weeks. Matter of fact, thank the Lord, it took LivehiphopDaily clothing to kind of get me onto a good space because what I did notice was everybody else was staying at home and buying stuff. Sure. So now I got to keep up with orders. Now I got to do things like that. They finally gave me another reason to do stuff. Yeah. Then I started thinking, well, I do got a to-do list. I could be working on the website. I could be figuring out advertising. I could be doing things that could be generating money and helping me not be staring at TV all day. You know, and there's other people, I'm pretty sure. Y'all stared at a lot of Pornhub. You know what I'm saying? You stared at a lot of Pornhub, man.
It's 3 in the afternoon.
There's only so much not degenerate you are when at 2 p.m.
Like
you are on page 54.
Made my whole to-do list by 11 a.m., which was go check the mail, go to the grocery store. What else is there to do?
Yeah. I'm probably there's a lot of people. The next one
I think that's how OnlyFans got its like real initial bump.
Second thing.
OnlyFans got its whole initial bump.
You know how many people I almost subscribed to just to support? I was like, I almost want to keep supporting black business.
It turned into community economics in this really weird and trashy way. I was buying trash on the internet that I had no business, that I knew was not even that good quality.
But you're right, though. I feel like that was one thing that people should take a pause and realize in this time that rather than, I guess, doing, and I feel like, I'm thinking about my father right now. Like, my father passed away when I was 17, but he passed away from lung cancer, but he also has Alzheimer's. And when I think about my dad is the quintessential, I worked all my life. Like, he's been working since he was 13. And then I remember him saying all the way up until he retired, I can't wait to just not do nothing. But I don't think your mind and your body was prepared to not do nothing. You did something every day of your life, and then I slowly watched his mind go bad. I think that sometimes you are so tied into your life of I gotta go to work, gotta take care of my family, gotta go do this, gotta do that. I can't wait till the day I retire. Then you never thought about Retiring is just more of you staring at your damn self. You know what I'm saying? Like,
If
what are you
haven't
gonna
figured out
do?
what you're gonna do? I'm so glad that you bring that up, because if we get right back in the story of 2016, we know how 2016 turned out.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of 2016, I just said, I'm gonna try this yoga thing. I was dealing with all this stress and trying to figure out. I was trying to do a yoga hustle, and the most impactful thing in my life, and influential person in my life, is my father. My father is an incredible musician, builds basses for a living.
Really?
And has been a musician my whole life, and he's just so creative, so innovative. His mantra is, you can sleep when you're dead, we got work to do. He's always working on a project. That's where I get that energy from. And so in July, which is incredible, we're coming up now on the anniversary of 4 years ago. I talked to my dad that night. There was a presidential debate that was about to come on. I remember hemming and hawing about, I got to rush off the phone because I got to do some yoga thing, and he's the same way. The next morning at about 6:30 a.m., I get a text message from my aunt that says, your dad has had a massive stroke. You need to call the doctor. And overnight, my dad busted a blood vessel on the left side of his brain. If not for the grace of God, the paramedics, the ambulance, everything that came together, he was transferred to one of the best stroke facilities in Pennsylvania, where he was at the time. But when I talked to the doctor at 7 a.m. in the morning, they said, if your dad makes it through the day, he will not walk ever again. He will not speak. He will not breathe on his own. He will not eat food. Your father's a vegetable. And I said, what is the cause? And he said, I think it's stress.
Yeah.
That right there, at the time I was teaching in yoga studios. I was talking every day at this time about wellness. Like, I was teaching, but I really had to pause and sit for myself, like, at that time. Like, what am I really talking about wellness if I'm not living it, and if literally the people closest to me are out here dying behind it? It was absolutely the most devastating thing, like, still to right now. My dad is 4 years later in recovery. He still cannot walk. He still cannot talk. He still cannot use of his right hand. He hasn't played the bass in 4 years. It's been a long and hard road back. My dad, I thoroughly believe, will make a full recovery. And so that started me on my path to figure out, what is wellness? How can I give it to my father? What would someone need? My dad was a healthy guy. He walked, he played racquetball every day. He drank too much sweet tea. He didn't drink or smoke. He ate some crazy food at the cookout, same things. Yeah. But it was the first time that is what really came into my brain. I don't think that we individually, we collectively, and communally, especially as Black folks, have ever worked ourselves out of that mentality that not only are we not slaves, but we also don't need to work ourselves to death in slavery. Yeah. And I had to see my father learn that a really hard way.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'm glad he's still here for you.
Still here.
Listening to that just reminded me of one of your own quotes. I believe you said, a Black woman in wellness is like a firefighter who goes out to save homes while coming back to your own house being on fire.
I said that?
Yeah, you said that. While coming back to your own house being on fire. And it just you saying that reminds me of that quote that, you're at this place and you're helping other people put out fires, but you at your own crib and then, like, the whole bitch is burning down. You know what I mean?
And by the way, I'm fine. I don't see any smoke or fire.
Yeah.
Because in trying to serve and to show up for other people. I know that you've heard that cliche term, like, is your cup full when you're pouring from it? I was pouring from a totally empty cup. I had the best playlist. I can rock you out in class. Everybody's feeling calm. And then I'm right to the next thing. So it really, I think that was probably, for sure, it has been the biggest shift in change in my life. And it's really relevant right now, because as we talk about this, like, pandemic and everything that's going on, everybody keeps talking about sickness, but nobody has talked to me about wellness yet. No. Nobody's talked to me about feeling better. Nobody's talked to me about those things. And so that's the conversation that has become most important, but it's for me first. So my whole work has been, I feel selfish. I feel guilty. I feel lazy. I feel all of these things just to take a break, just to take rest, just to take care of myself. And I know it's not me. I know that that's our whole hustle mentality, like the whole culture.
I like that though. You realize that self-care is getting a Popeye chicken sandwich.
Self-care is Popeye's chicken sandwich. It's a good joint.
Yeah.
It's stopping talking to people who do not lead to your mental and emotional wellness.
Yeah.
It's turning your phone off for real, and going away. It's deciding, do you need to be at this job or not? It's deciding everything from the clothes that you wear to how you're going to structure your day. I hate waking up early. I don't want to talk to nobody before 10 a.m. But I never decided to make that an important part of my wellness until recently.
Girl, that's my jam. Like getting up at 5 a.m. when nobody else is up. Oh man.
That was a punishment for me most of my volleyball career.
Jam, right?
So,
to this moment, when I wake up at 5 a.m. and somebody else wakes up, then I'm upset and stressed. Like, the hell are you doing awake? Like I tell you, like my wife is watching. She'll routinely do that. Not routinely, but occasionally. I wake up at my 6 o'clock and I'll be foot on the couch and it's quiet and I'll hear the door open. I'm like, what the hell are you doing awake?
I'm the opposite way. Y'all can have all of that. I don't even want to be in with other humans until at least 11 a.m.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you on the phone at 10.
Yeah.
And I spend that time now. It doesn't mean that I wake up at 10. It means that between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m., that is my time for me to gather myself, for me to meditate, pray, work out, roll my awesome joint, catch up in whatever sense it's necessary.
See, and that goes back to taking a beat. Like, I feel like you need to find a personal, like, self-care schedule like that. And again, self-care doesn't always have to be, like you say, jumping in the hot tub and doing stuff like that. My self-care is getting up at 5 a.m. and hearing crickets. You know what I mean? Because I know that in another couple of hours, it's not going to be that.
Sure.
And trying to bask in that little small amount of time when it's dark. I can listen to my devotional. I can scroll through timeline. It's not like insanity at this moment. You know what I mean? And I can just get off and really just sit there in the dark and say to myself, okay, I'm good now.
Yeah.
And that's my thing right now.
Yeah.
So let's pivot quickly to your new venture, man. Congratulations on Rare Birds.
Thank you.
I know what Rare Birds is. For those who don't know, tell us what Rare Birds is.
So when I left corporate advertising, I became a freelancer. So I'm a rare bird. I'll basically work on any project. You know, I'll be saying this cliche, like I'll babysit your kids, I'll walk your dog, and that's pretty close. Mm-hmm. I'll make you a website, I'll build you a marketing strategy, I'll launch a product.
So I got skills.
I got skills.
She's a walking fiber.
So that was just around for a little bit. And then again, the first time that I went to go visit my dad after I had been with him in the hospital, I don't know if you know about stroke recovery, but it comes with an increased incidence of anxiety and depression. And specifically when a person is nonverbal, imagine my dad has a specific form of aphasia, which is a communication disorder caused by his brain injury, which means that he knows what he wants to say, but every time he goes to speak, it doesn't come out. Could you imagine the anxiety of that?
And being so frustrated,
So I could see that when I went to go and see my father in the nursing home. I could see that in his eyes. And this was, again, 2016. You were still getting like CBD rolled up in little brown paper bags, and I was trying to find out who had it for real. It was like, is it real dope or not?
Yeah.
And so I was looking at like, how can I find something? My dad was on 17 different medications. I can't go to the doctor and say, oh, can you also put him on something for his anxiety that he's having?
Yeah.
So that's what made me start looking for, how does this work? I'm an athlete. I wore the Dare shirt. So it was like cannabis was forever a no for me because it don't help my performance. I don't need that. So I had a totally different perspective of cannabis.
Yeah.
But hey, we'll try it. Let's put down the wine and try something else. So in me looking for products for my dad, that was my first engagement with CBD. In 2017, I started coming to this little podcast that I saw in Atlanta, Cash Color Cannabis. I started sitting right there on that little thing, literally because I wanted to learn. I just needed to hear from people, experts.
Yeah.
I didn't see no women in the business. I was trying to consume that to understand how to help my dad. What that turned out for me to notice is that, oh, CBD is marketing. Oh, snap, I know that. I started reading labels, I started reading brands, and I couldn't figure anything out. And so I realized that I needed to get educated about it. So Rare Bird Botanicals, a year and a half ago, I became a certified cannabis sommelier. I basically can tell you two things about your weed, how good it is and how it will make you feel when you smoke it. I now have had extensive education and research. I've done most of my training in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm really grateful to have met friends in the industry who have opened up their farms and their dispensaries and their grow houses to me and just said, I've just said, I'm looking for something to help my dad. But what I really didn't realize is that, of course, it was to help me too. I cannot take care of other people until I can take care of myself. So I want to take such good care of my father that it became of utmost importance. Before he tries anything, I got to be the person to try it. Yeah. And then I started realizing what it was really doing. So I started to learn about cannabis. And so given that education and really working on that, my specialty is in terpenes. We can totally nerd out about that. And I love saying that I'm a weed nerd.
I love people who weed out on terpenes.
I am a weed nerd.
I love people
Let's
who
go
do that.
in. And so Rare Bird Botanicals is the product of that sort of creative inspiration that I love. I started Yellow Mat Wellness because I didn't want it to be SiHa Collins Yoga. I'm a lot of things. Yeah. I started Rare Bird Botanicals just as a creative endeavor to show that if we're going to create brands and products, they can be beautiful, they can be educational, they don't have to be gimmicky, they can be one good thing. And we should maybe start moving in that direction if we're going to talk about wellness. It matters that my wellness looks good too.
So what are the products that Rare Birds puts out?
So I want to present Rare Bird as like a design and creative agency that really specializes in cannabis brands and products. So Rare Bird Botanicals, this is 1,000 milligram full spectrum hemp oil. And I have been specializing in custom terpene blends. So this summer I'm dropping Super Lemon Haze and Blue Dream. And it's really cool to help people. I think that for so many of us, I know for me personally, my perception came from the couple of times that I engaged in smoking weed, which is probably some trash from the baseball players on my college campus.
Yes, that smells
right?
good. Now.
Trash, right? And then premium hemp flower. What I realized is that I definitely had that stigma of being a smoker, like, you don't need to do that. That's like a real pothead. And my continued experience with cannabis and particularly hemp flower was more beneficial to me than oil. So I started to understand, when I started to understand the properties of the plant and why it's so beneficial, I was like, wow, I just didn't know. I had to learn it the same way I would learn any practice. So I really started making this my practice. I was rolling joints as a meditation practice for about a year. My joint rolling has gotten really good.
That's what's...
And so Rare Bird curates premium hemp flowers and botanical blends. So everything that you think of, it's not just about cannabis. Cannabis is a flower like anything else. So I care about integrated wellness. And I hope that that's what shows up when you look and when you consume Rare Bird.
That's what's good. So what are some of the... You got some sticks right there for us. What are those?
Oh, yeah. So this is a combination of Dolce Haze, a wonderful strain that's Rare Bird Botanicals, but I custom blend with organic herbs. So in this is a blend for heart opening and compassion. It's got rose petals, mullein, raspberry leaf, a whole bunch of just good stuff. So I've been getting a little witchy cooking in the kitchen with it.
That's what's up. Is this for sample?
All of these things, yeah, absolutely.
Shout out to Dr. Moby, Professor Moby. We actually had somebody come on last month with Smoking Lips, and she was discussing with us the importance of learning how to smoke flowers.
Yes.
And when I heard you talk about the mix that's in here, I was thinking about Professor Moby.
I agree. It's so. Let's just start talking about plants and plant medicine, and that folks have been using that.
Yeah.
And so one of the biggest things that I've realized, and this is the same, what I didn't know that I was jumping into when I started really down the path as cannabis, and the reason why I wasn't telling anybody, I was telling people, I'm a yoga teacher, and I sort of do this thing over here. The reason why I'm so forward now about talking about this is because I started teaching a class 2 years ago called Cannabis is the New Kale at my yoga studio. And the first line of my ad would be, why is a yoga teacher talking about weed? And it's because knowledge is the key to wellness. When somebody just gives you the knowledge, I'm not trying to make you smoke no joint. You ain't got to try none of my oil. I'm not a saleswoman.
Yeah.
I'm an educator. And when you start learning what the properties are, not that you saw from that informational video or that pamphlet with the strung out dude on it, but when you really start learning the information, make your own decisions. But it's a practice. You have to get lots of access to it. So that's I didn't know that I was just going to be educating people. No, this will not make you high. Yes, what does the drug test for? No, auntie, those pills that you have in your purse are way more detrimental to you than anything that I would give to you. Do you believe me? Those are the conversations I started having.
I like that. The do you believe me part.
Do you believe me?
Do you believe me,
Do
though?
you believe that I would give you good things, that I would care about your health?
I believe you would.
Thanks.
I totally believe you would. So I can't wait to try that. And so that's just what's up. I was very proud when I did hear that you was launching your own line. I think that you are a brand ambassador of something. You know, I could definitely see you
Of
be
anything.
that person. Of anything. Have you? We were kind of talking about Bikram earlier. Have you seen the Bikram yoga documentary?
Yes, I'm familiar with it from being in the yoga world.
Yeah.
And so it's actually really interesting to hear from people who practice that lineage, from teachers or practitioners of it. And I've had total experience. For a year and a half, I was a hot power yoga teacher. So Bikram actually has ownership of Bikram yoga and the style, but I taught some of that same sort of, we are in a room that is 102 degrees, 95% humidity, and from the second that I close the door and we finish oming, we're going in. And so when people say, oh, yoga's the easy one, I'm like, oh, you haven't been to one of my classes yet.
Bro, and Bikram was something else. 'Cause like I say, it was almost like how people pay for dominatrix and stuff. It was almost like that. Like this man has you in a room that's 100 and something degrees, and he is literally cursing you the fuck out.
But I will say that I get the draw. It's not about what's happening in class. It's about you at the end of class reflecting on your experience. And I think why do people sign up for Ironmans? Why do people go and my Ironman is sitting for 10 days in silence. If you would have asked me a couple years ago,
You did that.
I did that.
Do that.
Yeah, that's my claim to fame. That's when you were really, I think, impressed with me.
Yeah,
Becca,
you
because
did the Ironman
think about how much I
silence.
talk.
Yes.
Can you imagine me being quiet?
Yo, for 10 days, that's a long ass time.
So long, 10 days of no speaking, no writing, no reading, no music, no yoga, no smoking weed, no drinking alcohol, no drinking, no eating, and I didn't have sugar.
I could do the weed part. The music would be hard for me.
Music is hard. I mean, talking. You realize, who am I talking to? Why am I always talking in my head all the time? And so it's just really enlightening experience. So whatever your practice, I love Yellow Mat Wellness because our mantra is practice makes possible. Anything could be a practice if you do it regularly and with some real diligence. So I'm all up if you want to make cannabis your practice, but are you doing it consciously, or are you doing it with that same thing to run away, detach, get away from the things that are happening? So I'm really glad to come in without this thing. I said, if I ever want to check my yoga-ness, all I got to do is go hang out with my family for one day. They think this is absolute baloney. Practicing, teaching yoga. My mom won't believe in yellow mat until Jesus himself comes to sit on a yellow mat. And I'm grateful for that perspective. Don't ever let me get so high that I turn into Bikram. You know what I'm saying on this?
Oh, and also, for those, disclaimer, Bikram was a total dirtbag.
He's
total dirtbag, man. Total dirtbag. Like, I'm watching this documentary.
His teachings are not in alignment with his character.
No. Not at all, man. But I did appreciate, I could admire how he did his thing. Like I said, I really feel like some people do kind of need to be cussed out. Like that's a thing that people actually do need sometimes.
It's an interesting case study in influence.
I would ask you, I don't need it.
What makes you believe something that anyone says? Yeah. It's because you have a level of trust.
Yeah.
I think that when you get into rooms, when you're really working on yourself, and so you have to think about how people attract other people. He was catching people at their most vulnerable. They needed something. They were looking for community. They were looking for a practice. They were looking something to be anchored to. And if you think about that, that gives people a lot of power and influence. If you say, try it my way, you'll feel so much better. And people do feel better. I think everybody wants to feel better. Yeah. Always. That's why we're doing everything that we're doing, is to feel better.
Yeah, at the end of the day, everybody wants to feel better. What do you feel like we're going to see you in 10 years?
In 10
Hopefully, I hope that didn't stress you out.
years,
Like your face.
I'm so stressed. Listen, I want to make a point here that I teach yoga because I know that I need it the most.
Yeah.
And it's the only thing in my whole life that I've ever been able to keep my practice with. So I hope that as people see me, I say all the time, sort of jokingly, I can certainly teach you to stand on your head. But if you're stressed out and if you're an asshole, you're just an asshole who can stand on your head. I'm trying to teach people to be more kind, calm, patient, focused, available to handle the stress in their life. And I want to be the example of, I'm trying to live a really intense life, but I just want to now be able to deal with the stress of it and not lose my mind, not go back to eating trash, not go to arguing with people that I love. That matters to me.
Because I mean, I was about to ask you about volleyball, but as you were talking, I was saying, and don't be competitive, Abby. Like, you know what I mean? Like, slow that down a little bit.
I don't know if that's going to happen, but 10 years, I'll answer your question. In 10 years, I hope to have more people alongside me who we've been able to create wonderful things together. I really love creativity, social impact. I would still be doing my same job at whatever ad agency if not for the terrible microaggressions and subtle racism and sexism that I had to face. So I'm glad to make my own thing up. Yeah. But one, Black folks, we are the most creative people I've ever seen. And I love that energy of making new things. So I hope in 10 years, rather than being a talking head or just somebody who gets really paid to sit pretty and like wave to yoga crowds, which I've been doing for the past couple years, I really hope that I have a team, a collective, folks around me who are like down to be making things, cool, great things. Wellness matters to me.
Do you still play volleyball?
Still play volleyball. I'll go play with you right now. I got a ball in my car.
Okay,
I got a ball in my car right here. We can go pepper.
No. Because I threaten people all the time about I'm going to get back on the court. I ain't picked up a basketball competitively in about 18 years. I'm pretty sure I died.
I'm in better shape now than when I played volleyball in college. I have no pain in my knees, in my shoulders, in my back. I'm much more rehab. I'm so grateful for my yoga practice for bringing my body back to a place of wellness. I feel great when I wake up in the morning.
Hey, well, I'm grateful for you coming by. I'm grateful for you sharing your story. And hopefully your story helps somebody else who is dealing with stress to learn how to, one, take a beat. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Two, work on the consumption, work on what you're allowing into your mind and into your body all the time. And three, find a regimen for yourself of your own self-care regimen. Mine is waking up at 5 a.m. And, I have an alarm set. Mine wakes up at 5 a.m. and I pray nobody else wakes up either because I need this hour. You know what I mean? So I hope people take something from your story and hopefully that helps them kind of relieve some of the stress that they are dealing with.
Thank you. Yeah, I want us all to be feeling better. And if I can say one thing, start where you are. Yeah. Start where you are. I say this at the beginning of all my yoga classes. I separate people into two groups and only two groups, those who are breathing and those who are not. And if you start separating people into those two groups and you start deciding which group you want to be in, it will really give you some clarity on how you want to move forward. I know which group I want to be in. This girl is on fire.
See, I appreciate you coming by tonight. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Can I come back?
Oh, could thanks. You come back? Yeah, always.
We'll meditate next time.
She already said thanks. You can come back anytime. And that's Cash Color Canvas, a high level of conversation on LivehiphopDaily.tv.